They laughed when the auctioneer called his bid, $30.85. Someone snorted loud enough to echo across the lot. But Lou? He didn't flinch. With trembling hands, he climbed into that rusted Mustang, the engine coughing like it had given up on itself long ago. The crowd jeered louder when it stalled. But Lou, he just closed his eyes, turned the key again, and when that old engine finally roared to life, those same people stood frozen, jaws clenched, watching him drive away. What happened next? No one, not one of them, could have seen it coming. Welcome to MS Incredible Stories. Let's uncover what really happened. Lou's fingers were numb from the October chill as he leaned against the Mustang's hood, tracing a deep scratch that ran from front to rear. The lot's harsh floodlights cast long shadows over the car's faded blue paint, streaked with rust that bloomed like dying flowers. He could almost hear the engine beneath the silence, a distant rumble that beckoned to the mechanic he'd once been. Around him, a small crowd of late-night bargain hunters laughed and shook their heads, wagering on whether any soul worth his salt would pay more than spare change for that relic. He remembered the gleam in his daughter's eyes the first time he let her sit behind a steering wheel, her tiny hands trembling with excitement as he guided her through the garage's quiet aisles. How proud he'd felt then, introducing her to the symphony of pistons and gears. Now, the Mustang stood before him, its spirit as battered as his own. When the auctioneer's hammer fell for the final time, Lou's offer echoed louder in his ears than any roar of approval. He pressed the paper in trembling hands, $30.85, every coin he'd scraped together on sidewalks and in park shelters. The jeers crescendoed as he climbed into the driver's seat, his breath coming in quick puffs against the cracked leather. With lungs full of cold night air, he turned the key. Sparks hissed. The engine coughed again, and died. Laughter broke out. Lou closed his eyes, swallowed the burn in his throat, and tried again. This time, a strained grumble emerged, like the Mustang itself was fighting to believe. His heart swelled. He eased the car forward, wheels scraping against gravel. Every bump felt like a promise. Passers-by stepped aside, curiosity replacing scorn. Lou's hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles white not from fear but from determination. He drove past the lot's exit as the auctioneer's calls faded behind him. Under a pale moon, the Mustang, steering crooked, tailpipes smoking, became Lou's sanctuary on wheels, a fragile vessel for second chances. Despite its flaws, it carried the echo of his past pride and the faint stirrings of a new beginning. Lou's garage smelled of oil and memories. He pushed open the warped wooden door, its hinges groaning like a long-forgotten engine. Under a dusty tarp, the Mustang sat on jacks, its underbelly exposed. Lou paused, feeling the weight of unseen eyes, ghosts of his past victories and failures gathering in the dim light. He flipped on the single bulb overhead. The warm glow revealed a cavern of tools. Battered wrenches lined the walls. A beat-up toolbox set open on a workbench, the spaces where favorites once lived now empty or borrowed long ago. His gaze settled on an old photo tacked above the bench. Him and his daughter grinning beside a fully restored vintage roadster. In that moment, her laughter felt present again. He lowered himself beneath the Mustang, fingers testing the frozen pistons and corroded bolts. Each creak, each spot of rust whispered reminders. The morning he'd found the headlines announcing his layoff. The evening of the accident that left his hands too shaky for fine work. The weeks he'd spent nursing his grief in darkness. A rat scurried past, and Lou startled, heart thundering. For a moment, he felt like an intruder in his own life. But as he wiped sweat and grime from his brow, clarity emerged. These ghosts weren't specters meant to haunt him. They were pieces of himself he'd cast aside. He reached for the wrench and began to loosen a stubborn bolt. It protested, then surrendered with a metallic snap, echoing through the empty space. The sound felt like forgiveness, the past admitting that he still mattered. He cleaned the part, rubbing until the metal gleamed, and slid it back into place. Outside, headlights flickered as someone passed on the street beyond the thin garage door. Lou imagined that someone witnessing him here, half-wrecked car, half-broken man, might shake their head. Let them. Here, beneath the Mustang's frame, he was reclaiming parts of himself that no auction bid could measure. An hour later, sweat-soaked and confident, he stood upright, the bolt secured. In the photo's soft glow, he allowed himself a small smile. The garage felt less like a tomb of grief and more like a cradle for renewal. Lou knew the road ahead would be long, but for the first time since the lot's auction, he welcomed the ghosts in the garage, because they were finally driving him forward. The night air was sharp when Mia stumbled into Lou's garage, her flashlight beam dancing across the Mustang's gleaming panels. She'd heard the engine's tentative growl from her apartment 2 blocks away and, curiosity piqued, decided to investigate. Peering over the fender, she spotted Lou hunched at the rear axle, sweat dripping onto oily floorboards. "Need a hand?" she called softly. Lou started, nearly dropping his wrench. He straightened, wiping his sleeve across his brow as sparks of embarrassment lit his cheeks. I'm fine," he managed, voice rough like gravel in his throat. Mia stepped closer, brushing a stray lock of hair from her eyes. "You fired it up?" she said, nodding toward the engine compartment. "Sounds alive." Lou offered a half-smile. "Or rattling itself apart." She laughed, a clear sound that echoed against the garage walls. Lou paused, surprised by its warmth. His own laughter had been buried beneath regrets for years. "I used to tinker with cars," Mia confessed, fisting a strand of hair. "My dad was a welder. Taught me how to weld exhausts and patch frames." Her grin faltered until he passed. Lou's heart clenched. He nodded gently, remembering his daughter's bright grin. "I'm sorry." They worked side by side, tools handed back and forth in sync. When Lou's wrench slipped, Mia steadied it with a patient hand. When a bolt refused to budge, the two leaned together, sharing the effort until it cracked free. Outside, passers-by slowed, drawn by the glow of sweat and laughter. A few whispered, but none dared mock the scene unfolding after midnight. By the time they finished, the engine bay looked almost new. Lou closed the hood and turned the key. The engine roared to life, its steady pulse like a heartbeat restored. Mia's grin was triumphant. "See," she said, elbowing Lou playfully. "Not so broken." He exhaled, chest lighter than it had been in years. Under the flickering garage light, surrounded by oil stains and discarded rags, the two strangers shared a moment that felt impossibly vast. In the night's hush, the Mustang's purr carried a promise. Neither car nor man would be defined by what they'd lost, but by the hope they chose to forge together. Mia returned the next evening carrying a battered toolbox and a plastic bag of scavenged parts she'd collected from a junkyard run. Lou's garage smelled of motor oil and fresh hope. He raised an eyebrow as she set the bag down. "I thought you might need these," she said, rummaging inside. "Brake pads, a new distributor cap, and this might fit. A spare alternator I swiped from that old station wagon on 8th. Lou watched her gentle confidence, her fingers tracing the parts as if greeting old friends. The city's distant sirens hummed through the cracked windows, but inside this space, the world narrowed to two people and a car on the brink of rebirth. "Why?" he asked softly. "You're not even getting paid." Mia shrugged, wiping grease from her palms on a rag. "Maybe I just believe in second chances." Her gaze settled on the Mustang's fender. "This car reminds me of what I lost and what I can still build." His throat tightened. He remembered how he'd felt the night he bought the Mustang. Pride and shame tangled together. Now, someone else was offering more than parts. She was offering belief. Together they knelt by the front axle. Lou guided her hand as she slipped the brake pads into place, her determination steady. He tightened the caliper bolts, listening to the click of metal teeth meshing. The junkyard alternator gleamed under the overhead bulb, promise hidden in its coils. Mia slid it into the engine bay and whispered a quick prayer before he connected the wiring. As they worked, Lou confessed fragments of his story. The accident that cost him everything. The daughter whose laughter still haunted his dreams. Mia listened without judgment, her quiet presence a balm against old scars. When the alternator was secure, Mia handed Lou a thermos of coffee, bitter, strong, just as he liked it. He warmed his hands around the cup, feeling a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years: trust. Outside, a lone street lamp flickered, then went dark, but inside the garage the two remained illuminated by shared purpose. The Mustang awaited its next breath, an engine begging for spark and motion. Lou lifted the hood and turned the key. The engine caught instantly, purring like a creature relieved to be alive. Mia hooped, and Lou laughed with her, the sound echoing against the walls. In that moment, a battered Mustang and two wounded souls found something neither expected: a stranger's offering that could change everything. Mist rose from the Mustang's hood as Lou shut it with a satisfying thud. He and Mia stood back to admire their handiwork: fresh brake pads, a polished alternator, and wiring that held firm under pressure. Outside, dawn's first light filtered through the dusty window panes, casting the garage in a hopeful glow. Word of their progress had spread overnight. By mid-morning, neighbors began trickling in. Ramon, the corner store owner, brought sandwiches wrapped in foil. A teenager from down the block offered to clean the Mustang's windshield with a battered sponge and a bucket of soapy water. Even Mrs. Alvarez, who'd once muttered about vagrants loitering, leaned over the threshold with a pot of strong chili. Lou felt awkward accepting help, pride tugging at his chest. But Mia nudged him gently. "Let them," she whispered, "they believe in you." With practice born of long days under hoods, Lou taught the teenager how to spray wiper fluid without flooding the engine bay. He showed Ramon how to melt cheese evenly on a sandwich using the Mustang's warm cylinder head. Mrs. Alvarez hummed softly as she ladled chili into paper bowls, sharing stories of her late husband's adventures in classic car rallies. Each small task, each shared smile, built something far stronger than metal and grease. The garage became a hub of quiet solidarity, a place where past judgments dissolved in the oil-stained light. Strangers became collaborators. Each hand lent was a stitch in the tapestry of Lou's comeback. At noon, Mia popped the hood again and peered inside. "Everything still looks good," she said, grinning. "Ready for a spin?" Lou met her gaze, sudden laughter in his eyes. "Let's do it." They rolled the Mustang out of the garage, engine humming confidently now. A crowd spilled onto the sidewalk, cheering as Lou eased the car forward, wheels rolling over fresh pavement. The neighbors broke into applause, children waving sticks like flags. Lou's chest tightened as gratitude surged through him. For a moment, Lou felt the ghosts of his past, the shame, the loneliness, fade in the warmth of communal purpose. In their place blossomed a new truth: he was not alone. Each spark of solidarity had fused together, igniting a flame of shared hope that would carry both man and machine toward a future none of them could yet imagine. A ripple began when Carlos, the neighborhood blogger, stumbled upon Lou's garage and filmed the Mustang's first smooth idle. He posted the video with the caption, "Homeless man's rusted Mustang roars back to life," and by sunrise it had hundreds of likes. By afternoon, strangers from across the city were commenting, sharing memories of old cars and stories of second chances. Lou watched metrics climb on the tablet Mia held, disbelief etched in his face. Hearts and supportive comments poured in. People offered parts, volunteer labor, even cash to cover expenses. An online donor tipped enough to buy a proper set of tires. Others sent messages of encouragement, some survivors of their own hard times. Others simply moved by the image of a lone man and his iron companion refusing to stay broken. Mia read aloud a comment from Blue Mustang fan. "This is more than a car. This is hope." Lou's throat tightened at the words. Who was he to embody hope? Yet every notification ping felt like a nudge, a reminder that his story mattered beyond these oil-stained walls. They organized a weekend workday. Carmen from 3 blocks overhauled in a portable welder. A mechanic named Jorge volunteered to replace the transmission gaskets free. Lou found himself coordinating schedules, fielding emails and messages, tasks he hadn't imagined tackling again. With each commitment, his confidence swelled. The night before the workday, Lou walked the Mustang outside under streetlights, running a hand along its fenders. He remembered telling himself he didn't deserve to dream. Now, the car's silhouette against the city skyline felt like a beacon, solid, real, a testament to persistence. When Saturday dawned, 20 volunteers arrived, tools in hand and smiles on their faces. They replaced the old tires, painted a fresh coat over the most pitted panels, and polished chrome trim until it gleamed. Lou led with steady hands and quiet gratitude, assigning tasks and offering encouragement. By day's end, the Mustang looked reborn. Its engine shone under the hood, bodywork gleamed, and tires hugged the pavement. As the crowd dispersed, Mia snapped a photo of Lou leaning against the car, the city behind him, and posted it with a simple caption, "From rusted to riding." That night, Lou lay in a shelter cot, replaying the day's events. Hope, he realized, was not a feeling but an act, built through countless small gestures from strangers who refused to let him surrender. In the glow of his phone screen, he drifted to sleep knowing that tomorrow they would keep building. Lou stared at the gleaming Mustang in the mid-morning sun, its flawless new tires and polished chrome mocking the fractured pride he still carried inside. The donations and volunteer hours had transformed the car far beyond his frail budget, and his gratitude warred with a deeply rooted sense of unworthiness. When a package arrived that afternoon, a custom seat cover and leather cleaner paid for by an online donor, Lou felt the walls he'd built around his heart tremble. He carefully unwrapped the cover, running his fingers over the supple material. It felt too fine, too perfect for a man like him. He placed it on the workbench, unresolved. Mia found him there, backlit by late-day light streaming through the garage window. "You okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. Lou forced a shrug, unable to meet her eyes. "I don't want to be a charity case," he muttered. "I earned this Mustang. I should earn every part of its repair, too." Her gaze held his, unwavering. "You earn the chance. Let people help. It doesn't diminish you." He looked away, heart pounding. Letting others in had always felt like admitting failure. Yet each gifted part carried a story of someone choosing hope for him when he couldn't. That evening, Lou took a walk to clear his mind. The city hummed around him, taxis looping, people hurrying, neon signs flickering. He stopped by a corner where a group of kids were playing basketball in a makeshift hoop, its rim crooked and backboard cracked. Their laughter echoed down the alley, and Lou's heart clenched, remembering his own daughter's gleeful shouts. Impulsively, he ducked into a nearby shop and returned with a fresh basketball, its surface worn but sturdy. He handed it to the oldest boy, whose eyes widened in surprise and gratitude. As the children cheered, Lou felt something shift inside him. Generosity was not charity, but connection. Back in the garage, Lou brushed dust from the custom seat cover and draped it over the Mustang's worn leather seat. A sense of peace settled in his chest. He knelt and tightened a bolt, secure in what he'd done with his own hands, then stepped back and ran his palm across the new leather. When Mia appeared with 2 cups of coffee, Lou held out one to her and allowed himself a small, genuine smile. "Let's finish this together," he said. In that moment, his pride was no longer in pieces, but whole, reconstructed by every hand that had believed in him. Lou's toolbox rattled as he rolled it down the cracked sidewalk, following Mia toward the block where streetlights stood crooked and broken. Over the past weeks, a handful of neighbors, moved by the Mustang's revival, had invited him to help restore parts of the neighborhood. Today, they planned to repair a row of battered benches and rig temporary lighting to make the block safer at night. Under a pale, autumn sun, Lou knelt beside a splintered bench, his hands steady as he sanded down rough edges. A small crowd gathered. Ramon offered iced tea. Mrs. Alvarez brought freshly baked empanadas. Even the teenager from down the block paused his homework to pass Lou a new plank of wood. As Lou measured and sawed, Mia tightened screws in the mounting brackets for a repaired street lamp. Conversation flowed easily. Stories of childhood games, hopes for weekend block parties, dreams of a cleaner, brighter street. Lou felt a warmth he hadn't known since before the auction, the quiet power of shared endeavor. He fitted the new wood into place, then stood to step back and admire the transformation. When dusk approached, Mia flipped the switch on the refurbished lamp. The bulb flickered, then glowed steadily, casting a soft pool of light over the newly repaired benches. Children who'd watched from nearby yards rushed forward, collapsing onto the seats with delighted squeals. Their laughter rang clear, bouncing off the brick facades. Lou leaned against the lamppost, watching families settle in for impromptu storytelling and card games, neighbors greeting each other with renewed cheer. The block felt alive, stitched together by acts of kindness. He traced the Mustang keychain hanging from his pocket, a silent reminder of how a broken car had sparked this wave of goodwill. Mia joined him, offering a foil-wrapped empanada. Lou accepted it gratefully, sinking onto a bench beside her. They shared a bite in comfortable silence as the lamp's glow warmed their faces. "You did this," Mia said softly. "You brought us all together." Lou tapped the keychain. "We did it," he replied, voice thick with emotion. "And it started with that Mustang." They sat as streetlights blinked on one by one along the block, the benches now sturdy and welcoming. In that moment, Lou understood that rebuilding the streets had done more than restore a physical space. It had repaired hope, one board and one bulb at a time. Lou eased the Mustang out of its makeshift parking spot, the engine's steady thrum rolling through the early morning air like a long-locked hymn finally sung. Parking brake released, he tipped his chin toward the vacant street, feeling the rumble beneath him as if awakening a sleeping giant. Mia climbed in beside him, fastening her seatbelt with a grin that carried equal parts excitement and faith. Lou caught her eye in the rearview mirror, offered a nod, then turned the key. The starter spun, the engine caught, and for a moment, the world held its breath. Then came the roar, a deep, resonant growl that echoed off the brick walls lining the alley. A dog barked in the distance. Windows rattled. On a nearby rooftop, a lone crow took flight. Lou let the sound wash over him, muscles relaxing for the first time in years. He shifted into first gear. The transmission slipped smoothly, responding to each guided jolt as the Mustang rolled forward. They crept through the empty streets, headlights illuminating layers of peeling paint and graffiti-tagged doors. With every block they passed, Lou felt the car's strength matching his own. He remembered the jeers at the auction, the scornful looks when the engine first coughed to life, each one now drowned out by this single, undeniable statement of power. Mia slipped her hand to his arm, fingers brushing leather. "That's more like it," she whispered over the engine's pulse. Lou grinned, fingertip tracing the dash's worn seam. He eased onto a stretch of open road. The roar deepened as he pressed down gently on the gas, the Mustang answering with a surge of torque that pressed him back into the seat. The city skyline spread before them, promise stretching as far as the horizon. For a moment, Lou let his mind drift beyond rust and repairs, beyond the park bench, the repaired streetlights, the community's goodwill, to a time before loss. A daughter's laughter, a garage filled with restored classics, a future once so certain. Now, this roar was more than an engine song. It was his own voice reclaimed. They cruised onward, tire tracks cutting through dew-slick pavement. Mia leaned closer, excitement shining in her eyes. Lou exhaled, feeling the Mustang's heartbeat sync with his own. In that first roar, he rediscovered why he fell in love with engines in the first place, and why second chances, like a restored Mustang, could sound more beautiful than anything he'd ever known. The sky cracked open just as Lou and Mia cleared the city limits, heavy raindrops pattering against the Mustang's windshield in an urgent rhythm. Lou flicked the wipers on high, water beating and streaming free as he navigated slick curves on the deserted country road. Each flash of lightning illuminated the road ahead, revealing slick patches and deep puddles pooling in wheel ruts. Mia's knuckles tightened on the passenger grab handle. "You sure about this?" she shouted over the din. Lou nodded, focus sharpening. "We'll be fine." He eased the throttle, feeling the tires bite into the wet asphalt. The Mustang responded, wheels turning sure despite the storm's onslaught. Lou's heart pounded, equal parts exhilaration and caution, as he reminded himself that every bolt and bearing in this car had been earned. The rain wasn't an obstacle. It was the test. Ahead, the single-lane bridge creaked under the weight of rushing water. Lou slowed, inching forward until the Mustang's headlights picked out wet planks beneath the surface. He gripped the wheel, palms slick with sweat and rain, and guided the car across with painstaking care. On the other side, the road climbed through a stand of tall pines, trunks shimmering in the downpour. Mia leaned forward, voice urgent but trusting. "You've got this." Lou exhaled, feeling a calm settle in his chest. Each turn of the wheel, each adjustment of the throttle, was a note in a symphony he knew by heart. He reveled in the Mustang's steadiness, the engine's growl a constant reassurance as rain lashed the glass. Halfway up the hill, the engine stuttered, a low cough as water sprayed from a hidden rut doused the intake. Lou's stomach dropped. Without hesitation, he downshifted, keeping the revs high enough to draw fresh air and ease through the water. The engine purred back, a sound of resilience that matched his own. At the summit, the storm's fury began to wane. Lou parked on a lookout, rain still pattering softly as the clouds slid away. He cut the engine, and the sudden silence felt profound. Mia stepped out, rain-drenched but smiling, and pressed her damp hand to the hood. Lou climbed out, water sluicing from his jacket. He looked at the Mustang, wheels muddy, paint streaked, but alive and unbroken. In the storm's aftermath, he realized that resolve wasn't forged in calm conditions. It was tested, soaked, and tempered through adversity. Together, man and machine had weathered the tempest and emerged stronger on the other side. Lou's fingers hesitated on the glove compartment latch as the Mustang idled outside the closed auto parts store. Mia watched from the passenger seat, curiosity bright in her eyes. "Go on," she urged softly. Inside, beneath a tangle of old receipts and an empty map tube, he found a small leather pouch. Its worn edges hinted at years of handling. He unfastened the drawstring, revealing a folded sheet of yellowed paper and a tarnished key stamped with a racing insignia. He smoothed the paper, the handwriting elegant but hurried. It named the car's original owner, Daniel Daredevil Reyes, and described clandestine meetings with city officials over the Mustang's restoration, hinting at payoffs and buried ledgers. His breath caught. This wasn't just a reclaimed relic, it was evidence. Mia leaned closer, voice low. "This could be big." Lou folded the note carefully and pocketed both items. He stared out at the darkened storefront, memories of worn auction blocks and laughing onlookers flashing through his mind. Whoever thought this car worthless had overlooked its hidden worth. "Let's finish up and head back," he said, voice firm. Mia nodded, and together they replaced the receipts and secret pouch gently where they'd found them. On the drive home, the rain-slick streets reflected street lamps like scattered diamonds. Lou's mind raced through possibilities. Who had planted this pouch? Why risk discovery? And what dangers might follow once the Mustang became more than a beacon of hope? That night, Lou spread the note on his workbench beneath the single bulb. Mia hovered at his side, coffee in hand. "We need to know the truth," she said. Lou nodded, running a fingertip over the key's insignia. It felt heavy with promise and peril. Their decision formed in the silent garage. They would trace Daniel Reyes' trail, uncover the ledger, and shine light on the corruption entwined with the Mustang's past. As the garage doors closed behind them, Lou felt a familiar spark. The mechanic's instinct for discovery, fueled now by something beyond repair, justice. The real restoration, he realized, would be of the Mustang's story itself. Lou's search began at dawn. He parked the Mustang outside the city archives, its engine ticking a soft rhythm as it cooled. With the tarnished key in his pocket, he and Mia navigated dusty corridors lined with aging filing cabinets. An archivist squinted at their request, but eventually led them to a restricted vault marked Mayor's Office Records. Heart-pounding, Lou used the key to unlock a heavy wooden door, only to find it fit an old cabinet at the back, not the vault itself. Inside that cabinet lay bound volumes stamped confidential. Mia gently slid one from the shelf. Its pages crackled as she opened it to entries dating back 5 years, listing payments marked vehicle restoration alongside cryptic initials. Daredevil Reyes' signature appeared on many lines, but beside it were sums that far exceeded reasonable repair costs. Footnotes mentioned storage fees at a nearby lot, likely the auction site where Lou bought his Mustang. Lou's jaw clenched. The ledger was a map of deceit. Inflated bills funneled to shell companies, bribes disguised as maintenance. The Mustang had been the centerpiece of a laundering scheme, sacrificed to hide stolen public funds. Mia's finger traced a line. $12,000 paid to Riverside Motors on the day Reyes disappeared. Lou remembered the date. Journal headlines had called it a mysterious vanishing. Now the Mustang connected the dots. They copied pages with a handheld scanner, mindful of startled glances from the archivist. Every entry they captured felt like unearthing a buried crime. As they worked, Lou felt a mix of vindication and dread. The car he loved was also evidence against powerful men. Before leaving, Lou replaced the volume precisely, closing the cabinet with a soft click. Outside, the cold morning air felt sharp against his skin. Mia slipped the scanner into her bag. "We have what we need," she said, "but we'll need more witnesses." Lou nodded, eyes on the Mustang's polished hood. "Then we find them." That day, as the ledger's lies began to unravel, Lou realized the real restoration wasn't of metal, but of truth, and he would drive it all the way home. Lou woke before dawn, sleep chased away by a knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. As he stepped onto the cracked pavement beside the Mustang, the streetlight flickered overhead, casting shaky shadows that seemed alive. He tapped the hood's cool metal, half expecting it to whisper warnings of what lay ahead. Mia joined him, coffee in hand, but eyes clouded by unease. "Did you hear that noise last night?" she asked, voice barely above the wind. Lou shook his head, yet admitted a creeping suspicion. His toolbox lock had felt loose this morning, latches unlatched. They climbed inside, and Lou found fresh dents on the driver's door, thin scratches, too deliberate to be random vandalism. Heat rose in his cheeks. Someone had been here, rifling through his life. The ledger, the key, the scanner. Had the wrong eyes seen them? He slid into the driver's seat, hands tremoring on the wheel. "We need to be careful," he murmured. Mia nodded, her jaw set. They'd already agreed to meet Carla, the retired lawyer, later that day, and he would need every ounce of composure. On the way to the cafe, where Carla waited, Lou kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting a black SUV to appear. Every passing sedan felt suspicious, every pedestrian a potential threat. The Mustang's roar felt too loud now, drawing unwanted attention. At the cafe, Carla greeted them with a warm smile that did little to ease Lou's tension. Over steaming mugs, they laid out the ledger's damning entries. Carla's eyes sharpened. "These men won't go down without a fight," she warned. "We must protect our evidence. And ourselves." Lou's stomach twisted. The ledger wasn't just paper. It was a trigger. Powerful officials could silence witnesses, manipulate records, or worse. He thought of the glove compartment key in the pouch. How easily they could vanish in a single hurried raid. Leaving Carla's office, Lou felt the weight of every step. As they approached the Mustang, they found a note tucked under the windshield wiper. 2 words scrawled in red ink. "Stop now." Mia gasped, hand to her mouth. Lou's heart pounded. He folded the note carefully and pocketed it. Fear had shadowed them this far. Yet as he looked at the car, its gleaming hood, its resolute stance, he felt a surge of determination. They climbed in together, engine silent, and Lou whispered, "Let them threaten. We'll finish this." With that vow, they slid into traffic, shadows of fear trailing behind them, but unable to extinguish the light they carried. Lou paced the narrow hallway outside Carla's office, hands shoved deep in coat pockets as he fought the urge to discharge his nerves with loud steps. Mia stood beside him, holding a folder bulging with copies of the ledger pages. When the door finally swung open, Carla beckoned them inside with a calm authority that felt like a lifeline. They settled around her polished mahogany desk as she reviewed the evidence one last time. Each page carried the weight of deception. City funds rerouted through shell companies, signatures forged with ease. Carla rubbed her temples, then met Lou's eyes. "I've contacted the district attorney," she announced. "He's agreed to meet us tomorrow morning." Lou's breath caught. This was the breakthrough they needed, but also the moment the stakes climbed highest. Exposing official corruption in open court meant confronting men who wielded influence like armor. He glanced at Mia, whose steady gaze bolstered his resolve. Carla continued, "I've arranged for the ledger's originals to be secured under court seal. We'll need sworn affidavits from each witness. Yourself, Mia, the archivist, and possibly the junkyard foreman who can testify about the auction's suspicious timing." She tapped a pen against the folder. "We must move swiftly. I'll draft your affidavits tonight." Mia nodded, voice firm. "We'll be ready." As they left the office, the late afternoon sun cast long angles across the sidewalk. Lou felt its warmth mingling with the cold, not in his gut. Hope tempered by fear. He slid in the Mustang's driver's seat, Mia beside him, and they rode in silence, each lost in thought. Later that evening, Lou sat at his makeshift desk, Carla's draft glowing on his laptop. He read the affidavit aloud, voice steady despite the tremor beneath. He swore to tell the truth, to stand against intimidation, and to protect the ledger's integrity. Signing his name felt like forging a new identity, one of courage rather than exile. Mia finished hers with equal solemnity. She slipped her signed pages into her bag, resolve shining in her eyes. Before bed, Lou stepped outside and ran his hand across the Mustang's hood. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we take back the story." The car's silent silhouette seemed to nod in agreement. In the hush of the night, with the lawyer's call echoing in his mind, Lou knew they stood on the threshold of justice, together. Lou and Mia arrived at the junkyard before sunrise, the yard's iron gates yawning open like a silent witness to their mission. Old engines and scrap metal formed a canyon of rust under a pale sky. They found Ramon, the foreman, waiting with a cup of coffee and a weary expression. Inside a small office cluttered with papers, Ramon spread out auction logs and maintenance invoices. His fingers hovered over a stack of bills marked Riverside Motors, then paused. "I kept those records because something smelled off," he admitted, voice low. "Wanted proof before I spoke up." Lou slid the ledger pages across the desk. "This shows the money trail," he said. "It matches your invoices." Ramon's brow furrowed as he flipped through entries. Amounts far larger than the cost of parts, dates that coincided with city budget approvals. Mia watched silently, studying Ramon's face for signs of fear. He swallowed, setting down a crumpled receipt. "If this goes public, folks at City Hall will lose careers. Or worse," he said. "But I can't stay silent anymore." His confession hung in the air like mid-morning heat. The complicit silence that had protected corrupt officials shattered with a single admission. Ramon signed a sworn statement, hands shaking as he affirmed each detail. Outside, the Mustang's engine idled steadily. Lou imagined its roar echoing through the corridors of power, disturbing complacency as he and Mia delivered the truth. Back in the garage, Lou filed Ramon's affidavit alongside the archivist's and their own. 4 statements strong, they now had the pulse of justice beating in their hands. Yet, as night fell, Lou wrestled with unease. Each affidavit risked retaliation. A broken key, a threatening note, a smear in the press. He pressed a hand to his chest, recalling the warning scrawled in red ink. Mia found him by the Mustang, seated on the fender beneath a single bulb. "We did what we had to," she said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. Lou nodded, the weight of the moment settling around them. In the hush, the Mustang's engine ticked cool metal beneath them. Complicit silence had been their enemy. Now, in its place, stood collective truth, fragile yet unbreakable. And as they looked out toward the street beyond the garage door, Lou realized that breaking silence required more courage than any repair ever would. Lou jolted awake at the crack of a distant crash, heart hammering. He flicked on the bedside lamp and grabbed his coat. Beside him, Mia was already at the window, eyes wide. In the garage, a single overhead bulb fought back the darkness, revealing twisted lock on the toolbox and splintered wood around the doorframe. They crept inside, flashlights carving narrow beams through the gloom. The Mustang sat untouched, its polished fenders gleaming coldly. Relief washed over Lou. At least the car was safe. But by the workbench, the shredded leather seat cover lay in tatters, and dozens of crucial parts, spark plugs, hoses, gaskets, were gone. He recognized each missing piece, painstakingly installed over weeks. Mia pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "They came back," she whispered. "They know." Lou knelt among the debris, stomach knotting. Someone meant to stop them, silence their fight. He ran gloved fingers over the gouges in the wood and bent metal of his toolbox. Each broken edge spoke of desperation, of threats unspoken. They gathered what remained, a handful of undamaged tools, the ledger still secure in Carla's sealed envelope. Lou retrieved the envelope from a hidden panel beneath the workbench. "This can't happen again," he muttered, voice steely with resolve. Outside, the night wind tugged at loose tarps. Lou propped the toolbox closed and reinforced its lock with a length of chain and padlock. Mia slid a plywood board across the door's interior, securing it with nails from a leftover box. The garage felt hostage no more, but the wound lingered. In the cab of the Mustang, they huddled under the car's dome light, reviewing their next steps. Carla's hearing was only days away. If they delayed, evidence might be compromised. Lou's jaw clenched. "We push forward," he said. "No fear." Mia nodded, hand tight on his. "They're afraid of the truth," she said. "That's why they strike in the dark." Lou started the engine. Its growl was a promise. They drove into the silent street, headlights cutting through empty lots, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. In that moment, the sabotage had forged them stronger, united by purpose and unbowed by threats, determined to see justice dawn. Lou rolled the Mustang onto the courthouse loading dock before dawn, the engine's muted growl swallowed by the stone facade. Behind him, the evidence van waited, its rear doors yawning open to receive the ledger sealed in evidentiary packaging. He felt the weight of every bolt, every witness statement in that car's sturdy frame. Mia walked beside him, carrying the small, locked briefcase that held sworn affidavits and photographs of the glove compartment pouch. They climbed the steps, the city awakening around them, newspapers spinning on racks, a lone street sweeper humming through empty avenues. Inside the cavernous hall, steel and marble echoed each footstep. Carla met them at the entrance to Judge Patel's chambers, her calm presence a beacon. She guided them through security and into a conference room bathed in early sunlight. A bailiff nodded, ushering them to a long table where the district attorney and opposing counsel stood, faces unreadable. Carla opened the briefcase and laid out the materials: the ledger, bound and stamped, witness affidavits, the tarnished racing key, photos of scratch marks on the Mustang's door. "Your Honor," she began, her voice firm, "Exhibit A." She gestured to the ledger, the cornerstone of their case. Lou watched as the DA's assistant carefully unpacked the document, lifting it onto a glass display stand. The pages seemed to glow under the courtroom lights, a silent testament to months of perseverance. The judge entered, gaveling the room to order. Back in the observer's gallery, Lou and Mia exchanged a tense glance. The gallery filled with reporters murmuring into microphones. Cameras clicked. The Mustang's transformation, from a laughed-at rust bucket to the vehicle bearing the ledger, felt surreal. When Carla presented a photograph of the pouch's inscription, a bold racing insignia, Lou's stomach clenched. That key had been the spark that ignited their investigation. Now it sat beside the ledger, both undeniable proof and a challenge to power. Judge Patel studied the exhibit, then turned to the opposing counsel, whose confident posture faltered. The exhibit's presence in that courtroom shifted the balance. Ignored scandal now stood center stage. As Carla concluded, Lou felt the engine's familiar pulse beneath his feet, a steady rhythm of resolve. The ledger, the key, the Mustang itself, all had converged here as Exhibit A. And in that moment, Lou knew they were riding toward justice, every roar carrying the truth. Sunlight streamed through the courthouse columns as Lou and Mia emerged onto the front steps, the gavel's echo still warm behind them. Reporters crowded at the railing, microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing like modern-day lanterns. Lou's palms sweat against the Mustang keychain in his pocket, a talisman of every challenge they'd overcome. He climbed a few steps and turned, facing the press corps. Mia stood beside him, folder of affidavits clutched to her chest. In that moment, the world seemed to pause. The hum of traffic, the distant whistle of a train, even the flutter of pigeons overhead hushed in anticipation. A reporter from Channel 9 cleared her throat. "Mr. Ortega, now that Exhibit A has been entered and sealed, what's next for you and the Mustang?" Lou looked at Mia, then back to the gathered crowd. He took a breath, steadying himself. "We came here to restore more than a car." He began, voice firm but warm. "We came to restore truth. And today, truth rides in every engine we've repaired, in every hand that reached out to help, and in every person who refused to stay silent." Click, click, click went the cameras. Lou's gaze swept the onlookers, neighbors who'd offered tools, the archivist whose discreet testimony had cracked the case, Ramon whose courage broke complicit silence. Each face was a reminder that justice wasn't an individual triumph, but a shared journey. A question volleyed from the press. "What will you do with the Mustang now?" Mia answered, her voice calm. "We plan to drive it back to the neighborhood it helped rebuild." She gestured toward the street beyond the courthouse plaza. "Because its true home is wherever hope needs a spark." Lou nodded, stepping closer to the railing. "And we'll keep turning wrenches, on cars and on systems, until every broken thing finds its second chance." As they descended the steps, the reporters' questions followed them like eager shadows. The Mustang idled at the curb below, chrome gleaming. Children who'd seen its first roar gathered nearby, their eyes wide with admiration. Lou climbed in behind the wheel and glanced at Mia. She smiled and slipped into the passenger seat. The engine began its familiar growl, a low, confident purr that rose into a roar echoing off the courthouse stone. Together, they drove down the boulevard, the steps behind them, headlights cutting through the afternoon glow. The Mustang carried more than metal and paint. It carried the stand they'd taken, the voices they'd lifted, and the promise that sometimes the most powerful justice begins on a set of simple steps. Lou's phone buzzed as they rolled into the garage, a secure message from an anonymous source. The display read simply, "Go to the docks." Midnight. Beneath it lay a scanned document, a sworn confession from a former city official detailing meetings with Reyes and the bribe locations. That night, Lou and Mia slipped through the deserted warehouse district, Mustang headlights slashing yellow arcs across graffiti-stained walls. At the docks, a solitary figure emerged under a single lamp, face hidden by a hood. He handed Lou a sealed envelope and nodded once before melting back into shadow. Inside the envelope lay typed testimony, printed on official letterhead. The whistleblower admitted to forging signature approvals, directing public money toward shell companies, and participating in front-loaded restoration contracts. His words were precise and contrite, each line backed by time-stamped email trails. Mia's breath caught. "This is it," she whispered. "The final piece." Lou folded the testimony carefully. He felt the weight of vindication. They'd moved from scraps of evidence to airtight truth, sourced from the very heart of corruption. Yet he also felt empathy for the man who risked everything to speak out. Back at Carla's office, they presented the new testimony. Carla's eyes glistened as she added it to the case file. "With this, the city officials have no room to maneuver," she said. "The grand jury will convene next week." Lou returned to the garage and ran a hand along the Mustang's fender, reflecting on the journey. The car had carried them from scavenged parts to a whistleblower's courage. Each bolt tightened, each affidavit signed, had built toward this moment. The next morning, local news broke the whistleblower's confession, headlined "Inside the Scheme." Official breaks silence. Lou and Mia watched from Carla's office window as the city buzzed, editorials demanding resignations, citizens flooding council offices with petitions. The ledger's lies and the whistleblower's truth had combined to topple abuse of power. That evening, Lou started the Mustang's engine. Its smooth purr echoed in the empty garage. He glanced at Mia, then drove out into the sunset-lit streets they had once restored. The whistleblower's truth had lit a fire beyond the courthouse, a blaze of accountability and hope. And as the Mustang's headlights swept over freshly repaired sidewalks and glowing street lamps, Lou knew their quest had kindled something far greater than justice. It had reignited a community's faith in itself. Sunlight glinted off the Mustang's polished hood as Lou guided it out of the garage for a celebratory drive through town. The streets were alive with cheering residents, families, workers on their lunch breaks, children waving handmade signs that read, "Thank you, Mustang Man," and "Justice rides again." Lou's heart swelled as he rolled through the familiar neighborhood they'd rebuilt together. Mia rode beside him, her camera clicking to capture every moment. She pointed ahead, and Lou turned onto the block where the repaired benches and streetlights still stood like sentinels of solidarity. Neighbors lined the sidewalks, offering waves and applause, some even tossing handfuls of confetti into the air. The Mustang's engine roared in response, a triumphant anthem that harmonized with the community's jubilation. They looped around the park, where Ramon manned a table stacked with ice-cold lemonade. He lifted his cup in salute, and Lou raised a finger in return, the unspoken gratitude passing between them richer than words. Ahead, Mrs. Alvarez held out a dish of freshly made empanadas. Lou accepted one with a grin before handing another to Mia. Its spicy warmth matched the day's energy.